Anybody hungry? Let's talk about fruits. What's up, fellow plant enthusiasts? My name is Dylan and this is Bane's Botanicals. Today we're going to be talking about fruit. Now this may seem like a topic that's kind of out of left field, but I thought we might explore some of the kind of periphery topics about houseplants while we're sort of doing these science videos. And fruit, of course, come from plants. And there are even some plants that we can grow out on our patios or in our backyards that yield fruit for us. So it's kind of a neat topic to discuss when we're getting into more botanical names, because there are some foods that are fruits that might actually surprise you. So I thought we could just kind of get into a little bit more plant science today. And we're going to hear some names of things that you may never hear again, but it's kind of fun just to kind of talk about it. And I know some of you are really into plant science, so this video is for you. When we're talking about fruit, let's first differentiate fruit and vegetable. Because when we're talking about cooking, you know, fruits are sweet and vegetables are more savory. But botanically, a fruit is anything that can basically be plucked off of a plant, but you leave the actual plant. Does that make sense? So like, let's take an apple for instance. You know, you don't eat the apple tree, you pluck the apple off of the plant. But something like, you know, celery or lettuce or spinach, those are the kind of things that we actually eat the plant, like om nom nom, we eat the whole thing. Even potatoes are not really fruits because you're eating like the actual part of the plant. Like that's like the tuber that's going to create the plant underground. So it's not really, you know, you're not going and plucking a potato off of a bush or lettuce off of a bush. You know what I mean? Another way you can look at it is a fruit is anything that bears seeds. So almost every fruit that we can think of is going to have seeds in it, other than things that have been kind of bred to not have seeds just for the sake of eating them, like grapes, seedless watermelon. Those are still technically fruits. It's just we've kind of made it to where they're not going to have seeds that kind of get in the way of us eating them. So where do we start with this? Okay, so when we're discussing fruit, it can basically be broken down into two categories: dry fruits and fleshy fruits. Now, fleshy fruits are the ones I have here. They're the ones that we spend the most time eating. Dry fruits are the ones that you'll see more on trees outside. I don't actually have any dry fruit here because at the time of this video, it is winter, like deep winter. It's February, it's extremely cold, and Merlin is meowing. Hi, Merlin. Come here, Merlin. Come here. He's just inconsolable today. So when we're talking about dry fruit, let's go ahead and get that out of the way, because I guess maybe it's not as interesting just because it doesn't directly relate to us as much. Dry fruits can also be split into two, which is kind of funny because of why I'm going to tell you. They're split into two categories based on whether or not they break apart. So there's a group called the dry dehiscent fruits, I believe is how you say it. And the dehiscent fruits actually will split open. So I have my list here because it's been a very long time since I studied this stuff. So we're going to have things like a follicle. A follicle is something that splits down the side, but only on one side. So an example of that is going to be milkweed. If you guys have ever been out in the field and you see that big dry pod and you kind of split it open and it's full of little kind of fluff, and that fluff just gets dispersed by the wind, that's milkweed, and that's a follicle because it only splits on the one side. Then we have a legume, which is going to be something similar to a follicle, but instead it splits on both sides. So an example of that is going to be peas, how peas kind of split in half. Capsule is kind of a broad category of plants when we're talking about fruit, because they not disperse, they split in a variety of different ways, whether it's through holes, slits, some of them just have a lid on them. So that's going to be violets, lilies, and many other plant families. And then another one is called a silicae. And a silicate also splits into two halves. It's different in the way the fruit is formed. Without getting too technical, it's formed in a different way than than legumes are, but they both split in half. So a good example of some silicates would be mustard and cabbage. And again, we're talking about the seeds. We're not talking about the actual the actual cabbage or the actual mustard. So then when we go into the next category of dry fruits, we're looking at dry indehiscent, which means that they do not split. They are a solid piece and they don't split. So we have the nuts, and this does not include peanuts or cashews. Those are actually kind of a different thing. These are nuts like hazelnuts, chestnuts, acorns. Those are like the true nuts. We have a really cool word called schizocarp. And a schizocarp is going to be like maple trees, carrot, dill, mint. And again, we're not talking about the parts we eat necessarily. We're just talking about the kind of seeds that they have, fruits, basically. And then we have kind of a big group called the achenes. Achene may actually, other than nut, achene may actually be a word you've heard before. Achenes are small, they're single-seeded, and they kind of break down into like multiple categories. For example, there's a Cypsella, and that's basically all the plants in the aster family. And the aster family is, I think we've discussed it before, I think the aster family is the biggest family of houseplants. It's either the biggest or the second biggest. But asters are going to include plants like sunflowers. So that's going to be achenes. Oh, I'm sorry, Cypsellas. A samara is kind of a winged achene. So if you ever go out to like an elm tree and you see the little helicopters and they come like whirling down onto the ground, those are samaras. So it's kind of a similar type of achene. And then we have Caryopsis. Caryopsis is basically the grass family, which is Poaceae. The difference between Caryopsis is the seed itself is fused to like the outer layer. Instead of being able to like have those come apart, they're kind of fused together. Again, I'm trying not to get I'm trying not to get too heavy into it, but that's dry fruits in a nutshell. So again, a lot of that may not really relate too much to houseplants or be too relevant even, to food, just because those are things that happen outside. Now, if you were a squirrel, you're going to be a little more interested because of things like acorns, and a lot of animals rely on seeds for sustenance. So dry fruits, of course, are very important in that sense, but of course they also just continue to spread, those lineages of plants. And actually it's funny because when we're talking about dry fruits, so many of those are wind pollinated. Where you're talking about like the little helicopters, for example, the samaras, I mean, those are designed to be carried away long distances by the wind, or the milkweed with its ability to just kind of float gracefully in the wind. Now we're going to get into the fleshy fruits. Those really rely more on being eaten, and that's why so many of them are appealing in flavor, because they kind of count on being eaten by animals, or maybe not us, but animals, and then the animal goes and poops it out someplace, and it's like free fertilizer, right? And then where the poop is, now this new plant can grow from the seed, which is pretty cool. I mean, how does that even happen? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. So fleshy fruits are not really broken down into like two nice categories. Fleshy fruits are just kind of an amalgamation of different things. So we're just going to I have some fruits here. So we're just going to go through the categories, and I'll just show a couple of examples. Now, the biggest family of let's not use the term family. The biggest group of fleshy fruits are going to be the true berries. Berries are going to include, before I get there, if we're looking at the anatomy of a fruit, I might post a picture if I can find a good one. We have to look at the layers similar to like the layers of the earth, or like the layers of the atmosphere. So we're going to use a couple of prefixes on some words that you may have heard before. So for example, if I'm talking about an endocarp, the endocarp is like the most interior part of the fruit. Now, that prefix endo you may have heard before because like human beings and mammals, they have endoskeletons, meaning internal skeletons. Now if I said exoskeleton, it's a skeleton that's on the outside like insects. So the exocarp of a fruit is going to be the outer layer, and in the middle of both of those is the mesocarp. Now you may have heard the mesosphere, which is kind of the middle layer of the atmosphere. So a berry, I'm bringing us back to this, I swear. A berry is a type of fruit that has a fleshy mesocarp and a fleshy endocarp. So both of them are fleshy. Now that's going to come back into play a little bit later. So examples of true berries are going to be dates, grapes. We have grapes. Those are actually cotton candy grapes, and they are amazing just because they're seedless, and I don't really like fruit that has seeds in it. Like I don't like crunching on seeds, so I can't stand like pomegranates, even though they taste good. Peppers. I've got a pepper here that is actually starting to crinkle a little bit. I went and bought this stuff a while ago, and I haven't had a chance to make this video, and I'm actually making this video on lunch, so if I look a little bit disheveled, that's why. And when I say on lunch, I mean like my lunch break at work. Tomatoes. We have a lovely tomato. Oh, blurry. There we go. Lovely tomato here. Blueberries, which I have a nice little thing of blueberries. I actually had a cat. I haven't done my cat video yet, but my oldest cat that passed last summer, he loved blueberries. And I don't know why, but I could just throw one to him and he would just chase it and just nom it on down. I don't know why he liked them so much. And cherries. So that there's more than that, but those are some of the big ones. Now, berries also break down a little bit into a couple of other categories. Let's move that just a little bit. So you have pepos, which are berries that just kind of have a hard rind. And some examples of pepos are going to be pumpkins, squashes, which I have right here, and cucumbers. Actually, I think this might be a zucchini. What is the difference between a zucchini and a cucumber? Like I don't eat either one, so I'm not really sure. But and then another category of berry is going to be hesperidiums. Hesperidium is another really cool word. Hesperidium is basically going to encompass all of the citrus fruits. So oranges, this is actually a blood orange, which if you haven't had a blood orange, they're pretty good. They're a little more mild as far as like the citrus goes of a regular orange, so they're kind of nice. What else do I got in here? I've got a lemon, that is a hesperidium, and I've got a lime, which, I've bought these fruits and stuff, and half of them I don't actually eat, but I'll find something useful to do with them. Maybe I'll grow my lemon tree from this, right? Maybe I'll pull the Dragonite and try to grow some seeds from grocery store stuff. Yeah. What else do we have? Okay, so we're done with the berries. So now we're going to move on to drupes. Now the difference between a drupe and a berry is that the mesocarp, which is the middle part, is fleshy, and the endocarp, which is that interior part, is stony. So we're looking at fruits now that typically have a pit in them. So plums, peaches, almonds, olives. I wrote cherry there, but I swear cherry was a berry. This is where science gets tricky because people want to categorize things different ways depending on who you're talking to. Mangoes. I have a mango in here. Mango is a drupe. This one's actually about ready to eat, I think. And coconuts. Coconuts are drupes. You guys can probably hear that milk in there. I haven't really decided how I'm going to crack this open yet. I've never actually busted open a coconut before, but I really am kind of excited to try it. This is kind of an adventure for me because I just never, I don't know, I just was never in a situation where I would be, cracking open a coconut. What else is in this bowl? I think I want to say that avocados are drupes too. I didn't write avocado down, but I have an avocado. And they have that hard pit, so I'm pretty sure these are drupes too. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that. We have pums. Pums, basically they grow from an inferior ovary. It's hard to explain what pums are without getting too complicated, but apples are like the major pums. So like if you've ever studied French, they are actually called pommes. Like that's the word for these in French. What is it in? I thought it was something similar in Italian, but anyway, plums probably one of the most famous fruits, really. I mean, apple a day, right? And there are so many varieties of apples. I don't know if you guys have ever studied about, like, if you go to the grocery store, I mean, you see maybe 5 or 6 different kinds. I think I read that there's like over 70 different types of apples. That's crazy. Now we're going to get into some different shaped fruits. So we have this category called aggregate fruits. And the deal with aggregate fruits is that the flower of an aggregate fruit has many pistils, and the fruit is formed from these many pistils coming together. The pistil of a flower is the female part of the flower. So these pistils, they come together and they form an aggregate fruit. Now, some examples of aggregate fruits are going to be blackberries. It's also going to be raspberries. Now, you guys know what a raspberry looks like, and I'm not going to be able to do that because of the way I'm recording, but you can see each individual circle of this raspberry has a seed in it. And that's because those pistils came together and they formed a fruit. But they can still be separated, is kind of what I'm getting at. Like they're not fused together, but you can still separate each little thing out. Now, I mention that because when we move, also strawberries. Strawberries are aggregate fruits, and strawberries themselves are kind of a false fruit, technically. The little seeds are kind of the actual fruit of a strawberry. We'll just leave it at that. But I mentioned the pistil thing because the next category is called a multiple fruit. And with a multiple fruit, you have many ovaries, and the ovaries are in the pistil. You have many ovaries of an inflorescence, which an inflorescence is just like a group of flowers. An inflorescence, as far as houseplants go, would be like peperomia. I mean, peperomia, get that stalk that has all the flowers on it, that's kind of an inflorescence. And what happens is these fuse together and they make a fruit. And like the most famous example, I mean, a couple of other examples are going to be mulberries, figs, Osage oranges. If you've ever seen an Osage orange, it kind of looks like a tennis ball, like a wrinkly brain tennis ball. And you can't eat them, so you won't find them in the grocery stores. But if you live in the US, we do have Osage oranges here. And during like August and September, you'll drive by like a tree and you'll just see all these tennis balls in the tree. So that's kind of cool. And they're about the size of a regular orange. But the most famous one that we do eat is going to be pineapple. And if we look at the shape of a pineapple, not like the overall shape, but if we look at this, we can see each of these little shapes here. That would have been an ovary in that inflorescence. And these are actually like fused together, like all the way fused. It's not something that you can separate like a raspberry or a blackberry. These are actually like one solid piece. So this is a multiple fruit. And I think with that, that is a crash course on fruits, which has somehow managed to take me 20 minutes to discuss, but that's okay. So just to kind of give a quick recap, at least on fleshy fruits, because that's kind of the most relevant thing to us, the The multiple fruits are the fused ovaries of an inflorescence, like a pineapple. The aggregate fruits are pistils of a single flower that have fused together to make a fruit, like a raspberry or a blackberry. The Hesperidiums are a type of true berry that basically encompasses all of the citrus fruits. The Pepos are another type of berry that have the hard outer rind on them, like squash and cucumbers and pumpkins. The true berries are basically a conglomeration of many of the fruits that we know of, like blueberries and grapes and bananas and peppers and things like that. And then the drupes are the fruits that have the hard pit in the center, most of them. So your plums and your peaches and the coconut. Well, actually, that doesn't have the hard pit in it, but and mangoes. So that's that. Maybe you guys learned a few new words today. I remember studying about this in college, and I always loved the words Hesperidium and schizocarp. Those always jumped out at me. But it was just interesting to kind of look at the food we eat in kind of a different way. Like when you think about the fact that a tomato is a berry, you know, it's just kind of like, if you're not somebody that's ever gotten into botany, it kind of changes your outlook on it a little bit, because it's like, oh, this is actually a fruit and it serves a different purpose than, you know, lettuce does. It's just totally different and unrelated. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's all I have about fruits. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found this interesting. I've got at least, well, I have more than a couple more science videos coming, and these upcoming videos will make you look at your houseplants differently. You're gonna go up to your houseplants and you're gonna be like, how about that? This is a video I've been wanting to make for a while, just because I always found it kind of interesting. So please contribute if you want to add some of the other minor categories that I didn't discuss. And if I made any errors in my research, let me know. Like I said, sometimes things get categorized differently. But yeah. Thank you so much for your likes and subscribes, and for sticking with me on this channel and being a part of this journey with me. I'm trying to get our wings, you know what I mean, and trying to get more plant information out there to the masses. So thank you guys so much. Until the next video, I will see you very soon. Thank you.